Karen sat rigidly at her kitchen table, her fingers tapping impatiently against the smooth surface of her smartphone. The late afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting long shadows over the meticulously arranged piles of HOA documents she had stacked hours ago. This was her domain. The self-appointed queen of Willow Creek Estates, she was convinced that maintaining order, her order, was the only way the neighborhood could survive. And today, she had a new target. Her eyes flicked to the list of violations she had compiled after the weekend's patrol. One house with an unapproved garden gnome, another with a stray trash bin left visible past the 7 p.m. deadline. But it was the house at 152 Maple Lane that truly irked her. A large, flamboyant flamingo statue stood proudly on the lawn, neon pink against the otherwise pristine green. Karen had already sent a letter to the homeowner, warning of a fine if it wasn't removed within 48 hours. Now, she wanted to make sure the message was clear. With a deep breath, she dialed the number listed in the HOA directory. Her voice was already sharpening as the call connected. "This is Karen Miller, HOA Board President of Willow Creek Estates. I'm calling about your lawn decoration, the flamingo. It's against our community guidelines and needs to be taken down immediately." A brief pause. Karen smiled smugly. She expected a flustered apology, maybe a promise to comply, or better yet, a quick surrender. But the voice that came through the speaker was calm, smooth, and unexpectedly confident. "I'm aware of the guidelines, Karen. Thank you for your concern." Karen's brow furrowed. "So, you'll be removing it?" "Not exactly," the voice replied evenly. Karen's smile tightened, a flicker of irritation sparking inside. "I'm afraid the rules are clear. If you don't comply, there will be fines, and you'll be subject to further action. Is that a threat or a promise?" the voice asked, now with an unmistakable edge of quiet challenge. Karen's heart quickened. She wasn't used to being questioned. She leaned forward, voice dropping just a little. "I'm just trying to keep the neighborhood standards high. Everyone else follows the rules. Sometimes standards need a fresh perspective," the voice said cryptically. "Maybe what's considered acceptable isn't always the right way." Karen's mind raced. Who was this person, calmly defying her like this? Usually, her tone alone was enough to intimidate a homeowner into submission. But here, on the other end of the line, was someone she couldn't easily shake. "Look, this isn't a negotiation. Remove the flamingo or face the consequences." A pause. Then, almost casually, the voice said, "Before we continue, Karen, who exactly do you think you're talking to?" Karen blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" There was a brief, knowing silence. "Just remember, sometimes the person on the other end holds more power than you think. Don't underestimate me." Karen's grip on the phone tightened as a cold knot formed in her stomach. She forced a final warning. "This is your last chance." But the line went dead. Staring at her phone, Karen felt the first ripple of doubt wash over her. This wasn't going to be as easy as she'd thought. The quiet confidence in that voice, the subtle defiance. It was like a crack in the armor she'd spent years building around her control. Her phone buzzed again with a text. Message from an unknown number. "We'll see how long you can keep this neighborhood under your thumb." Karen's jaw clenched. She was used to being the one who wielded power, but this time, she was the one being challenged, and the real fight was just beginning. The morning after the phone call, Karen woke up with a flicker of hope. Maybe the mysterious homeowner had simply been bluffing. Surely the flamingo would be gone. She imagined the owner begrudgingly removing the statue, muttering under their breath, but submitting all the same. But when Karen drove by 152 Maple Lane on her routine neighborhood patrol, the flamingo stood boldly where it always had. Not only that, but something was different. Around the statue's base, a ring of small stones formed a neat circle, painted with cryptic symbols Karen didn't recognize. Faint, elegant patterns, almost like a language. Her stomach twisted. What was this supposed to mean? As she stared, a few neighbors gathered nearby, whispering and pointing. Karen caught fragments of their conversation. It's like they're daring her. It's a protest, but quiet. Did you see those symbols? Karen's chest tightened with frustration and suspicion. The flamingo was no longer just a simple lawn ornament. It had become a symbol of defiance. Her control was being challenged, but the message was unclear. Who was this Jordan? And what game were they playing? That afternoon, Karen sat at her computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. She searched every public record she could find on the homeowner at 152 Maple Lane. Jordan. The name sounded normal enough, but the trail soon took a strange turn. No social media profiles, no public photos, just a few dry mentions in legal forums about HOA disputes years ago in a distant state. Someone with experience dealing with boards like hers. Her unease deepened. At the next HOA board meeting, Karen could barely keep her eyes off 152 Maple Lane's empty chair. She brought up the flamingo incident with sharp-clipped words. This is not just about a lawn decoration anymore, she said, her voice tight. It's a direct challenge to our community standards. Whoever is responsible needs to understand the consequences. But as the meeting wore on, Karen noticed something strange. Other homeowners were nodding in quiet agreement with Jordan's silent rebellion. A few even exchanged looks that bordered on sympathy. Afterward, she caught a glimpse of Jordan, not at the meeting, but walking past the community park. Tall, unassuming, dressed simply in jeans and a hoodie, Jordan's calm presence was magnetic. No flashy protests, no loud complaints, just quiet confidence. Karen's mind raced. This was not a typical neighborhood squabble. Jordan seemed to wield influence without trying, a subtle force growing under the surface. It was like a slow-moving storm, gathering strength with each passing day. Late that night, Karen's phone buzzed again. Another anonymous text. "You can try to silence us, but the neighborhood is waking up." Her hands trembled slightly as she stared at the message. The game had changed. Karen's usual tactics, threats, letters, social pressure, were no longer enough. Whoever Jordan was, they had a plan. And Karen was trapped in the first moves of a battle she hadn't expected. She replayed the phone call in her mind. The calm voice, the cryptic warnings, the quiet defiance embedded in those painted stones. For the first time in years, Karen felt something she hadn't felt since becoming HOA president. Uncertainty. Could this quiet newcomer unravel everything she'd built? Or was Karen still the one who held the true power in Willow Creek Estates? The days following the HOA meeting felt like walking on a tightrope for Karen. She was hyper-aware of every glance from neighbors, every whispered conversation behind her back. The quiet defiance wasn't just about a flamingo anymore. It was turning into something far bigger, and Karen could feel the tide shifting beneath her feet. Jordan remained an enigma. Despite Karen's mounting frustration, the mysterious homeowner still hadn't made any public statements or dramatic gestures. The flamingo statue stood unyielding, surrounded by those strange symbols, as if silently daring Karen to act. But the real surprise came when Karen started hearing rumors. Neighbors who once nodded dutifully at Karen's meetings were now quietly asking questions. "Have you heard about Jordan's other neighbors?" One whispered during a community barbecue. "There's more of them than you think." Karen's curiosity turned into unease. Who else was siding with Jordan? She decided to find out. On a bright Saturday morning, Karen drove around the neighborhood, noting the subtle signs of resistance she hadn't seen before. Lawns dotted with tiny protest signs that skirted HOA rules but clearly challenged Karen's authority. Mailboxes sporting stickers with slogans like "Community, not control." And in a few yards, Small groups of neighbors gathered, exchanging knowing looks when Karen's car passed by. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a cryptic message from an unknown number. The quiet ones have the loudest voices. Karen stared at the screen, a cold shiver running down her spine. Determined to regain control, Karen arranged a private meeting with a few longtime board members, hoping to rally support. She spoke with urgency. "We're losing the narrative. If we don't act now, this Jordan person and their allies will take over the board." But even among her allies, doubts surfaced. Some admitted they had begun questioning Karen's heavy-handed methods. The neighborhood was changing, and Karen's iron grip seemed more fragile than ever. Later that evening, Karen's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed the number was blocked. Hesitating only for a moment, she answered. "Karen," a calm voice said on the other end. It was Jordan. Karen's breath caught. "What do you want?" "Just to talk," Jordan replied, smoothly. "There's no need for this to get ugly. We both want a neighborhood that thrives." Karen's instincts screamed caution, but curiosity pushed her forward. "Then why are you defying the rules?" "Because sometimes rules aren't fair," Jordan said softly. "And sometimes people need to stand up quietly to make a difference." Karen felt a flicker of something she hadn't expected. Respect. But she swallowed it down quickly. "You're playing a dangerous game, Jordan. And you're clinging to power that's already slipping away," Jordan answered. "The community is waking up, Karen. You can either lead with us or be left behind." The line went dead before Karen could respond. Her mind raced. Jordan's calm confidence wasn't just a mask. It was a weapon, one that was slowly but surely turning the entire neighborhood against her. Karen realized this wasn't just a battle over flamingos or lawn decorations. It was a struggle for control, for the very soul of Willow Creek Estates. And the silent army Jordan was building wasn't about to back down. As the night deepened, Karen sat alone, the weight of the fight pressing down on her. The question loomed larger than ever. How do you fight a battle when your enemy moves in? Whispers and shadows? The following morning, Karen awoke with a headache. The night's uneasy thoughts had given way to a gnawing sense of urgency. This wasn't a petty neighborly spat anymore. This was becoming a serious challenge. And Jordan was proving to be more than just a rebellious homeowner. Karen's inbox pinged. She opened it cautiously. There, in bold font, was a letter marked "Legal Notice." Her eyes scanned the message quickly, disbelief turning to irritation, then creeping worry. The letter was from a law firm representing Jordan, warning the HOA board against enforcing the recent lawn decoration fines. The letter cited vague but potent clauses about homeowner rights and due process, threatening legal action if the HOA didn't immediately cease its enforcement. Karen's pulse quickened. This was no bluff. She slammed her laptop shut, grabbing her phone to call the board. The usual confident voice felt brittle when she spoke. "We need an emergency meeting. This has gone beyond simple rule enforcement." Minutes later, the board convened in Karen's living room. The atmosphere was tense. Karen spread the letter out on the coffee table, tapping it sharply. "This is a threat. Jordan's lawyer is warning us not to enforce the rules." Murmurs rose from the other members. One older board member scratched his chin, unsettled. "Are we sure this letter's legit? Could it be a tactic to scare us off?" Karen shook her head. "It's too well written, and the law firm is real. I did my homework." Her eyes scanned the room, daring anyone to argue. "We need to reconsider how far we push this." But not everyone agreed. A younger member leaned forward. "Maybe we should listen. If Jordan knows the law better than us, maybe the rules are too harsh. We can't keep bullying people." Karen's jaw clenched. "We're enforcing community standards. Without them, this neighborhood falls apart." Just then, Karen's phone buzzed again. Another anonymous text. Power isn't won. By threats, Karen, it's earned. She clenched her fist, anger and fear twisting inside her. Determined not to lose ground, Karen decided on a counterattack. If Jordan wanted a legal battle, Karen would find the weak points in Jordan's case and in Jordan's background. Maybe there was something to discredit, a mistake, a secret. She hired a private investigator. Days later, a thick folder arrived on her doorstep. Karen scanned it quickly. Jordan's history was clean, professional, but there was something else, a file from years ago. Jordan had been involved in a controversial HOA reform campaign in another state. That battle had ended with Jordan's opponents labeling them a troublemaker, a power-hungry idealist. Karen smiled thinly. So Jordan has a reputation, she muttered. Maybe we can turn that against them. Her mind spun with ideas. She drafted a sharp letter accusing Jordan of sowing division and threatening neighborhood harmony. She planned to send it the next day, expecting it to rattle Jordan. But as she sat down to finish the letter, her phone rang. The screen showed a blocked number again. Karen. Jordan's calm voice came through like a shadow slipping into the room. Karen stiffened. What now? Let's not turn this into a war, Jordan said softly. I'm not here to destroy the neighborhood. I'm here to make it better. Karen narrowed her eyes. By defying every rule and threatening legal action? Jordan laughed quietly, without humor. By standing up when the rules are unfair. Sometimes power isn't about enforcing control, it's about earning trust. Karen's breath caught. She wanted to shout, to argue, to remind Jordan who had held the reins for years. But something in Jordan's voice, in their unwavering calm, unsettled her. The call ended, leaving Karen staring at the phone. The legal threat was real. Jordan wasn't just fighting with words. They had the law and the neighborhood's quiet support. Karen realized this battle had become more than she'd bargained for. The stakes were higher, and if she wasn't careful, she might lose everything. The days after the legal letter and Jordan's cryptic call felt like walking through a storm for Karen. The once familiar streets of Willow Creek Estates seemed charged with whispers and hidden glances. The quiet rebellion that started with a neon pink flamingo was now a ripple turning into a wave, and Karen was desperately trying to hold the dam. But as the pressure mounted, Karen found herself isolated. Even some of her closest board allies were questioning their own loyalty. The neighborhood was divided, and Karen's old tactics, threats, fines, and authoritative letters were losing their edge. One afternoon, Karen received an unexpected knock at her door. Standing on her porch was Mr. Patel, a retired school principal who had quietly lived 2 blocks away for over 20 years. He was respected by the community and known for his level-headedness. Karen, he began cautiously, I think it's time we talked. Karen braced herself, unsure where this was going. I've been watching how this conflict with Jordan has escalated, Mr. Patel said, folding his hands, and I'm worried it's tearing the neighborhood apart. Karen's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? An alliance, he said simply. Not against Jordan, but with them. Maybe it's time to find common ground rather than keep fighting. Karen scoffed inwardly. She had been fighting for control so long, the idea of compromise felt like defeat. Still, the strain was undeniable. And what makes you think Jordan would even listen? Mr. Patel smiled kindly. Because Jordan's not just a troublemaker. They care about this neighborhood too. We all want a thriving community. It's just a matter of how. Karen looked past him, considering the quiet streets beyond her lawn. The flamingo statue flashed in her memory, surrounded by those strange symbols that had puzzled her. Jordan's rebellion was more than a nuisance. It was a message, a call for change. Reluctantly, Karen agreed to meet Jordan. They arranged to talk at the community center, in a neutral space away from prying neighbors. When Jordan arrived, Karen was surprised. They wore no hoodie or casual clothes today, but a neat, unassuming blazer. Their calm demeanor hadn't changed, but there was a warmth in their eyes that was impossible to ignore. "Thank you for meeting me," Jordan said. Karen nodded. "I want to understand. Why all this? Why the flamingo, the symbols, the legal threats?" Jordan sighed. "Because Willow Creek Estates has been stuck. Rules that were meant to keep order have become chains that bind us. We need to embrace individuality, creativity, community spirit, not just rigid control." Karen swallowed hard. It was harder to argue when Jordan spoke not as an adversary, but as someone who truly cared. They talked for hours, hashing out ideas and concerns. Jordan explained the symbolism behind the stones, ancient signs of protection and renewal, meant to inspire the community to rethink their traditions. Karen shared her fears about losing control, about what would happen if chaos replaced order. Slowly, an unexpected partnership began to form. By the end of the meeting, Karen and Jordan agreed on a plan. A community event celebrating diverse styles, creative expression, and respectful dialogue. It would be a chance to rebuild trust and redefine what neighborhood standards meant. Together. But as Karen walked home, a nagging thought crept in. Was this truly a fresh start, or just the beginning of a new kind of power struggle? The announcement of the upcoming community event spread through Willow Creek Estates like wildfire. Banners appeared on lampposts, flyers slipped under doors, and a social media page sprang up overnight. Karen and Jordan stood side by side at the first planning meeting, a surprising sight that drew equal parts curiosity and skepticism. Most homeowners were cautiously optimistic. The promise of a celebration, one that embraced both tradition and new ideas, was a breath of fresh air. Yet beneath the surface, tensions simmered. At the next HOA board meeting, a faction of longtime residents voiced their concerns. "We're losing control," one elderly woman warned, clutching her cane. "This event is just a disguise for chaos." Karen felt the weight of their disapproval but stood firm. "This is about healing the community, not dividing it further. We can't run a neighborhood on fear and strict rules alone." But even as Karen spoke, she noticed some neighbors exchanging wary glances. The alliance she'd formed with Jordan was fragile, and not everyone was ready to embrace change. In the days leading up to the event, strange things began happening. Garden gnomes, once the bane of Karen's rule, appeared overnight on several lawns, each with a small card that read, "Freedom grows where rules bend." A few mailboxes were spray-painted with vibrant colors, and a mysterious flyer circulated, urging residents to open their eyes. Karen's phone buzzed with a new text message. "The neighborhood is waking up. You can either lead or be left behind." This time there was no sender ID. The mounting acts of subtle rebellion unsettled Karen. Was this the work of Jordan's supporters, or something else? The night before the event, Karen sat in her living room going over the final preparations. She was tired but determined. This was her chance to reclaim the narrative and unite Willow Creek Estates. Then her phone rang. It was Jordan. "Are you ready?" Jordan asked quietly. Karen forced a smile she knew Jordan couldn't see. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Good," Jordan said, "because once this starts, there's no turning back." The next day, the community park buzzed with energy. Tables were set with colorful decorations, art displays lined the pathways, and music floated through the air. Neighbors mingled, some hesitantly, others with genuine smiles. Karen watched as families admired the diverse gardens and creative lawn ornaments. She even spotted the flamingo statue, now adorned with fresh flowers and a small plaque explaining its symbolism. But as the afternoon sun dipped lower, a shadow darkened the festivities. A group of dissenters, led by one of Karen's fiercest critics, arrived uninvited, They carried signs reading, "Keep Willow Creek clean" and "No to chaos." Their presence stirred whispers and tension. Karen felt her heart race. Would this eruption of conflict undo all the progress? Jordan approached her calmly. "Stay steady," they said. "We planned for this." The dissenters began chanting, their voices rising. Some neighbors joined in, while others stood silently, caught in the crossfire. Karen's grip tightened around the program in her hand. She realized the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. As the crowd grew louder, Karen glanced at Jordan, who met her gaze with unwavering resolve. This was the moment Willow Creek Estates would be defined, not by rules or rebellion alone, but by whether its people could find common ground in the chaos. The tension in the park thickened like a storm about to break. The dissenters' chants grew louder, echoing across the gathering. "Keep Willow Creek clean! No to chaos!" Their voices cut through the festive music, turning the mood sour. Karen felt the weight of every gaze on her. Some neighbors clutched their signs tighter, others exchanged uneasy looks. The fragile peace she and Jordan had worked to build teetered on the edge of collapse. "Stay calm," Jordan whispered, stepping beside Karen. "We can't let them take this from us." But Karen's heart pounded. The years she'd spent enforcing, the rules, the authority she wielded, it all felt like it was slipping away. Suddenly, a young man from the dissenters pushed forward. "This neighborhood was built on respect and order," he shouted, "not flamingos and nonsense symbols." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Karen took a deep breath. "This event is about community," she called out, projecting her voice. "It's about finding ways to respect both tradition and change. We don't have to fight." But her words were met with more boos. Jordan stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "We're not here to destroy what makes Willow Creek special. We're here to protect its heart, its people. Change isn't chaos. It's growth." A few neighbors cheered softly, but the dissenters weren't swayed. Suddenly, a sharp crack rang out. Gasps spread through the crowd as a firecracker exploded near the edge of the event. Panic flickered in people's eyes. Children cried, and some neighbors began pushing toward the exits. Karen's breath caught. Was this a cruel prank, or a deliberate attempt to sabotage the event? The dissenters shouted louder, accusing Jordan's supporters of staging the disturbance. The park descended into chaos. Karen tried to restore order, but her voice was drowned out. In the confusion, she saw Jordan calmly helping a frightened child, their presence a steadying force amid the turmoil. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Karen felt the sting of defeat. The divide between the old guard and the new was deeper than she'd imagined. That night, alone in her living room, Karen's phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. "The neighborhood is watching, Karen. The old ways won't last." She stared at the screen, torn between fury and exhaustion. Jordan's rebellion had shattered her control, but maybe, she thought, it had also shattered something else, her certainty. The next day, Karen found a handwritten note slipped under her door. No signature, just a simple message. "We want to build together, not fight." Her mind raced. Was this a truce or another challenge? Karen realized that to move forward, she would have to confront more than just Jordan. She would have to confront herself, her own fears, and the limits of power. The battle for Willow Creek Estates wasn't over. It had only just reached its breaking point. The days after the chaotic event were a whirlwind. Karen found herself at a crossroads she hadn't anticipated. The old rules, the rigid control she once wielded so confidently, now felt like chains holding back a neighborhood, desperate to breathe. That note, "We want to build together, not fight," haunted her. Who had sent it? Jordan? One of their supporters? Or someone else entirely? Karen decided to find out. She reached out to Jordan, proposing another meeting. This time, it was not to negotiate from a position of authority, but to truly listen. At the community center, the mood was different. No hostility, no veiled threats, just two neighbors, tired but determined, ready to face the future. Jordan smiled warmly. "I'm glad you called." Karen took a deep breath. "I've realized something important. I tried to flex power without seeing the real people behind the rules. Maybe it's time to change that." Jordan nodded. "That's why I started this. Not to fight, but to wake us all up." They talked late into the evening, sharing stories, hopes, and fears. Karen confessed how lonely it had felt at the top, the pressure to control everything. Jordan revealed their own struggles, balancing personal ideals with community realities. By the time they parted, a plan had formed, a new vision for Willow Creek Estates, one that balanced respect for tradition with space for individuality and creativity. A community that listened as much as it led. But the real surprise came the next morning. Karen arrived at her mailbox to find a thick envelope. Inside was an official letter. The HOA board had voted unanimously to appoint Jordan as co-chair of the committee overseeing community standards, a move that stunned many residents. Karen's first reaction was shock, but beneath it lay something new: hope. The neighborhood was changing, and so was she. Word spread quickly. Some neighbors cheered the decision, others grumbled. But the dialogue had begun. Slowly, barriers fell. Flamingos stayed. Symbols sparked conversations. Gardens bloomed with diversity. Karen and Jordan worked side by side, blending old and new, authority and empathy. Then came the final twist. One afternoon, while sorting through old HOA files, Karen discovered a forgotten document, an original covenant clause granting homeowners the right to express themselves through tasteful outdoor art and decorations. It had been buried under layers of amendments and interpretations, quietly ignored for years. Karen smiled to herself. The rules she'd fought so hard to enforce were never meant to stifle creativity. In that moment, Karen understood the true lesson. Power isn't about domination or control. It's about listening, adapting, and growing together. Willow Creek Estates wasn't just a neighborhood anymore. It was a community reborn. And Karen? She was no longer just the enforcer of rules. She was a part of something bigger, a leader who had learned that true power comes from connection, not command.